This is a grant information session for the 2021 Natural and Cultural Grant Program, which is supervised by the Douglas County Heritage Conservation Council. My name is Jan Shupert-Arick, and I am the program coordinator for this program. In 2021, there will be grant funding available for projects that conserve the natural and cultural places and heritage across Douglas County. I wanted to give you just a few ideas of past projects. Top left, we have a project that relates to the restoration of the Stadium Arch, which is a World War I memorial at Haskell Indian Nations University. Center top, the council supported funding for a project at the Pioneer Cemetery in Baldwin City, which included cleaning, repair, and resetting of historic stones relating to the founders of Baker University in Baldwin City. Below that is the Yarda project. This was a history and heritage project that included digitization of oral histories taken and also the development of an exhibit that is used by the Yarda community to share their history here in Lawrence related to the Santa Fe Railroad in Douglas County. On the right is the Ivan Boyd Prairie at Blackjack Ruts. This grant project created a new trail, partially handicapped accessible trail through the prairie. Lower left, the council supported an expansion of the Baldwin Woods Preserve, which is part of the Kansas University Endowment and Kansas Biological Survey, used for educational purposes near Baldwin City. Center on the lower portion of the screen is the Grover Barn. This is a recent project that funded three interpretive kiosks at the Grover Barn, which was an Underground Railroad site and a site where John Brown came with freedom seekers for safe haven at the Joel and Emily Grover Barn in Lawrence. And lower right, the council has funded the Eudora Area Historical Society's museum projects on Main Street in Eudora. The next slide. The HCC promotes the conservation of our cultural and natural heritage to honor our past, enrich our present, and inspire our future. Several more projects. The Kansas River is protected by Friends of the Caw. The Friends of the Caw receive funding for riparian project along the shoreline and also for educational programs to educate the public about the importance of having clean water system and stable banks for water purification. On the right is the Winter Schoolhouse, a recent project that restored this 19th century schoolhouse, and it also includes a prairie area. And this nomination was also accepted as a national registered property through the grant process. Lower left is the Pearson Farmhouse at Blackjack Battlefield and Nature Park. The county funded the restoration of this house. In the center is the representation of the Kansas Biological Survey. They conducted an inventory of the remaining prairie lands in Douglas County, so we know where they are and the quality of the prairies. And on the lower right, the council funded signage at the display garden at this Monarch Watch Station on KU's West Campus. These are just examples of the many projects that the council has funded over the last decade. Grant support goes to projects all across Douglas County. These are our townships, and one of the things the council looks for is how to distribute the money so there is consideration for conservation of natural and cultural resources across the county. Sometimes culture needs to be preserved. This is a photo of the Yarda community that existed along the Kansas River before the flood of 1951. These were Mexican immigrants who came to work on the Santa Fe Railroad and built their home here and became the founders of the Hispanic community in Lawrence. The housing units were all wiped out by the flood of 1951, but the history remains. In 2021, there will be approximately $200,000 available for grant awards. Generally, the council receives requests 2 to 3 times the amount of available funding. So it is a highly competitive grant program. So consider that as you are preparing your application. There are 2 categories of grants, a major grant and a target grant. A major grant this year will range from $40,000 to a maximum of $74,000. Target grants will be anything under $40,000. The HCC strives to award 1 major grant in each grant cycle. If 1 major is awarded, all other major requests would automatically be moved to the target grant category. Here's a grant timeline for this program. Potential applicants are required to meet with the program coordinator, that would be myself, Jan Shupert-Arick, by February 25th, 2021. Application deadline is Wednesday, March 10th at 5 p.m. All applications will be submitted by email to my email address, jshupert-arick@douglascountyks.org. Applicant presentations are required for major grant applicants and are encouraged by all other applicants. Those sessions will be held on March 18th and March 25th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. 1 or 2 evaluation sessions will be held where you may attend, the public may attend, but make no comment on April 1st and April 8th if needed at 7 p.m., also via Zoom. Award recommendations will go to the Douglas County Commission in early May for approval. Who may apply? Douglas County-based entities, nonprofit organizations or businesses, K through 12 schools, colleges, universities, libraries, or any unit of local government. Individuals, families, or out-of-town organizations, businesses, or unit of government must have a Douglas County partner. What types of projects are eligible? Historic structures, historic sites, archaeological sites, or historic cemeteries. Projects that include prairie, woodlands, waterways, habitat restoration or preservation, cultural landscapes or trails. Agriculture, working farms, heritage farms, high quality agricultural soils. Projects relating to stories from before the Civil War to the present, including Freedom's Frontier National Heritage Area themes, the Civil War and pre-Civil War heritage, settlement stories before and after the Civil War, stories about the enduring struggle for freedom and the continuing struggle for freedom, or pre-settlement history. Stories that elevate told or little untold, undertold, little-known stories of underrepresented people, magnifying the narratives from indigenous communities, immigrant or refugee populations, or marginalized groups. Projects that give visibility to little-known but significant places and stories. The evaluation process. Highest criteria. Does your project include the conservation and preservation of natural and/or cultural resources? The project provides substantial benefit to the conservation and preservation of our resources. Do you bring matching resources? This refers to the presence and extent of additional resources dedicated to the project. Will there be in-kind contributions? Will additional funds come from other grant programs? Is there cash on hand? Loans, perhaps? Project partnerships, volunteer labor, or donated or partially donated professional services for the project. Sustainability. This refers to the long-term maintenance of a project. What steps will you take for the future to ensure that the preservation of the project continues? Or how will you make the project available to the public? Additional criteria. Project urgency. This refers to both the nature and extent of the preservation threat. For example, is the roof leaking? Is a wall falling down? Is there something urgent? If there is, let the council know this in your grant application. Community impact. This refers to how the project contributes to maintaining or enhancing Douglas County's heritage for the public benefit. This may include heritage tourism, elevating those undertold stories, magnifying historically underrepresented voices, bringing awareness to the lesser known yet significant places in our community, providing public educational benefit and economic impact. For example, will you be using local labor and services in your project? Where will the materials come from? These are things that keep local dollars in our local community, and the council appreciates knowing about this. Connectivity. This refers to how strongly a project connects to physical sites and interpretive stories, as well as demonstrating a collaborative effort between agencies or organizations. Educational interpretive value. Will there be opportunity for the public to acquire educational benefits through educational programs, educational partnerships? Will there be exhibits or publications? Does the project illuminate undertold or untold stories? And does the project enhance the understanding of cultural and ecological history? Public access refers to whether the project includes opportunities for the public to experience or have contact with the project, including direct physical access, but perhaps virtual access. If there is no public access, what is the justification for this project? Your budget. This refers directly to how reasonable the costs are associated with project activities outlined in the project. Do the cost estimates appear valid based on known costs? Are all project costs accounted for? Are bids included in the application? Feasibility. This refers to how realistic the proposed project is and the capacity of the applicant to finish the project by the project deadline. Considerations include the project description, time frame, projected costs, and having the necessary regulatory approvals for those yet to, or are those yet to be secured, such as local permits, zoning approvals, land use rights, and if applicable, project approval by the Kansas State Historic Preservation Office. Is there evidence that the individual organization has capacity to accomplish the project? And if the project requires other expertise that the organization does not have, how will that expertise be supplemented? Additional criteria. Does this project involve a designated structure, a historic district, or a historic site or landscape? Such listing and designations include national, state, or local register of historic places for structures and districts, landscapes with national or state recognition, and designated as conservation areas, wilderness areas, and historic or scenic trails. The overall quality of the application. This takes into consideration the grant application's completeness, clarity, thoroughness, as well as the overall thoughtfulness of the grant project. Is the budget thorough and reflective of the project activities described? Did the applicant fully answer each application question? And the application timeline. Be sure to connect with me and set up a meeting prior to February 25th to discuss your project. The earlier the better. But before you meet with me, please make sure you review the guidelines and the actual grant application itself. Remember that the grant deadline is Wednesday, March 10th, 5 p.m. The full application must be in one PDF document, no larger than 15 megabytes. You may have to reduce the size of photographs. You may not be able to include everything that you want. So it's important that you write a succinct description of your project and include what you feel is most important. Applications will be submitted by email. Applicants will make presentations to the Heritage Conservation Council on March 18th and 25th. The HCC will review applications on April 1st and 8th. Award recommendations will be sent to the Board of County Commissioners in early May. The funding decision by the County Commission will be made at a public meeting. Then applicants will be notified in May and June. Grant agreements need to be signed by all parties. And first distribution of funds, which is generally 30% of the grant award if it's over a $5,000 amount, you will receive initially as your first grant award payment. Then the payments are reimbursable. A second distribution would come after submission of an interim report approved by the Heritage Conservation Council, which is generally a 60% payment. And lastly, a final 10% distribution after submission of a final report that is approved by the Heritage Conservation Council. Reports are reviewed by the HCC at their monthly meeting, which are held on the first Thursday of each month. Note, the HCC does not meet in August. To be included in an agenda, reports must be received at least 10 days prior to a meeting. Project agreement will need an official signatory from a business or organization. Sometimes the Heritage Conservation Council adds conditions, amendments to grant agreements, and those would have to be agreed upon before your grant agreement is fully executed. If you have an award of $5,000 or less, you would receive 100% payment at the front end of the project. However, a final report is required by at the end of your project. So you report back to the county on how your project went and how all the funds were distributed, how they were used for your project. If the grant award is over $5,000, those would come again in distribution amounts of 30%, 60%, and 10%. Grant acknowledgement is very important. An acknowledgement shall be included in materials resulting from or related to the Douglas County HCC Grant Award. These materials might be research publications, annual reports, newsletters, press releases, books, films, radio programs, databases, reports, online resources, exhibits, and events related to the award. You would agree to provide written acknowledgement with the statement provided by the consul in your grant agreement. And I will provide the Douglas County logo for you to use in your published materials. The Heritage Conservation Council now has, the Heritage Council has yard signs, and sometimes plaques will be made available for building restoration projects. So remember, schedule a meeting with the program coordinator prior to February 25th. My email is jshupert-arick@douglascountyks.org. My mobile phone during COVID is 785-766-8433. Grant information can also be found under the Douglas County Heritage Conservation Council on the Douglas County website. Thank you. Thank you very much for your interest in preserving the natural and cultural heritage of Douglas County.